What price will Bitcoin hit in 2025? So the high, 5% saying 5% chance hitting 1 million, 14% at 250K, jumps all the way down to 250K at 14%, 24% chance of 200K, 44% chance 150, 70% 130, goes down to 89% at 110, which is probably undervalued. So these are the numbers we're looking at. This is not a huge market, $221,000. I don't know how many people are involved here, but this is a good sort of launching point for us to talk about where price might go. What highs are we going to see in 2025?
The $200,000 contract is incredibly underpriced. I mean, I would be a buyer of the 250 contract. You buy 150, 200, and 250. I think all of those are like incredibly underpriced.
I agree completely. 14% at 250. Where would you put it, Steven?
I think 150 is like 90% plus. I think 200 is probably 75% plus. And I think 250, at least 50%, maybe higher.
I think I agree with those numbers largely. So the 1 million at 5% is probably good. I might put it at 10% chance.
Yeah.
To me, the requirement for that to happen is the creation of the SBR. So if you believe that that's pretty likely, that would increase my projection there. I do think it's pretty likely. I'd say 80% chance that the SBR gets created and the 200,000 coins are stashed in the SBR and earmarked for long-term hodling. As far as adding to it, I'm less convinced that that's going to happen, but I still think it's a decent chance to happen, like above 5%. So if both of those things happen, to me, the game theory says if I'm a nation state, the United States, most powerful nation on planet, they have the global reserve currency, and the United States says, okay, we are basically knighting Bitcoin as a global reserve asset, an important global reserve asset, and we're holding it in a reserve along with oil and gold, etc. So if you're saying, okay, this is as important as oil and gold, and it's the most powerful country on the planet, like you would be negligent as operators of a nation state to not also create a reserve and also add Bitcoin to your treasury. I just don't understand how that could not happen. And if that does happen, then you get the HODL FOMO race where everyone has figured out you got to hold this thing for 20, 30, 40, 50 years forever. This is the future of global reserve asset. And it's a stampede to accumulate as much as possible. The demand is just insane, and who knows where it stops. So I think it's above $1 million. So I would say that chance is 10%. You know, I'm very much like I'm a strong believer in that number, and maybe it should be higher.
You got to show, since we're talking about the SBR, show the Eric Trump photo. Eric Trump. Let me be clear. Eric tweets this, not Saylor. Saylor retweets it, but Eric tweets this last night, and he says,
I'll reiterate. It's two friends, one passion, Bitcoin. Yeah. With a rocket ship.
Two friends, one passion, Bitcoin. And it's at Mar-a-Lago. This picture, if you weren't heavily allocated to Bitcoin, you saw this picture, that's your buy signal. I mean, I think what people are underestimating in their attempt to predict the SBR is that the Trumps actually appear to be in, like they want Bitcoin. It is an authentic desire that they are moving towards. It is not like a mere political ploy or whatever. There's some other motivation besides just like popularity. And Eric appears to really like it. He appears to actually be personally passionate and interested in. I mean, I've heard rumors as well of the relationship between him and Donald on this. They're pushing for it. I mean, they are authentically pushing for it behind the scenes.
I do have to say that in talking to some people at the party, the people I was kind of talking to about the SBR and through you, Steven, very, very bullish on it happening, you know, telling stories about who they're talking to and who's looking at this thing and the feedback they're getting, etc. I also talked to some people at the party that had a fundamentally different view. This is unlikely to happen. They're kind of dismissed it as an unlikely, or basically asking too much. It's like they're like, yes, you know, the crypto industry, Bitcoin industry supported the administration, supported all kinds of pro-Bitcoin candidates who were successfully elected, like 98% of them or something ridiculous like that. But that a strategic Bitcoin reserve is just asking too much. The United States is not ready to do that. And the prudent, like that Trump would do the prudent thing and punt on it, and do something less important, as kind of a favor to the industry that supported him. So that wasn't a different take, and this is from a person who does policy stuff in DC, and it's also kind of ear to the ground. So just wanted to share that as well. There are people out there who have ear to the ground that are not as nearly as bullish on the idea of an SBR happening as others in the industry who are also have their ear to the ground.
That's correct. But I will say a caveat there. I think we're talking about the same person. And I also had a and you're correct. There's kind of much lower probability, more skepticism. What he told me, though, was the caveat, like the curveball that doesn't account for is if Trump actually wants to do this thing.
Right.
If there's an authentic desire. And I think increasingly that is what we're seeing. I think your odds that this isn't just like political maneuvering, but for whatever reason, Eric and President Trump, they actually just love Bitcoin.
Well, that's why I think that the Eric Trump photo with Saylor is another sort of, proof point in the idea that this is actually going to happen. And also his speech that he gave, where was that, the MENA conference? He showed an understanding, legit understanding of what Bitcoin is and why it's important. So if he's influencing his dad on this subject, that seems pretty bullish.
I think whatever your odds were about the SBR after that photo with Saylor, you should increase them 15%. I mean, I think it was that much.
Yeah, I'm at a Pareto now. I'm going to go 80-20. We'll see what happens. All right, Brandon.
Let's talk about this Trump thing quick.
Okay.
I think it's black and white clear that he has to throw a bone to the Bitcoiners. We came out for him in a big way. The question is, what does Trump think is a bone to throw us? Right. In Nashville, he said strategic Bitcoin stockpile, as in don't sell the Bitcoin versus a reserve. That's what he said. What if all he thinks he needs to do for us is don't sell the coins and some regulatory benefits, and Bitcoin hits 150 next year? That's good enough, right? That could be his position, because what if he runs into challenging headwinds in DC getting things done, right? And that comes back to your point, Stephen. I think it's inevitable that he'll run into challenges the harder he runs at this. And then the question does actually become, does he personally need this to happen or want this to happen? And is he willing to spend political capital for it? So I could still see him saying, hey, I did you guys a solid, the best Bitcoin president ever. I got you to 100K. We're not selling the coins, and we got a new SEC chair. The rest is on you, baby. I could see that.
Yep. And I think that's totally reasonable. I think that's something you could definitely see. But I bet that's not what Michael Saylor was talking to him about at Mar-a-Lago yesterday.
The Roman Empire, the longbow, gravity, missiles, projectile, infinite.
Yeah, I don't think Saylor was saying, here's the bare minimum that you should do. I don't think bare minimum comes out of Saylor's mouth.
No. And I've heard some kind of rumors, right? That Trump has said that he views an increasing Bitcoin price as a meaningful barometer of his success. He wants to see that number going up in the same way he loves seeing the stock market go up. I've heard that he has said in conversations that he wants to see it. He wants to see it over 150 within the first few months. And he wants to see that price increasing. And, Eric Trump at Middle East, I mean, he threw out $1 million Bitcoin. I mean, there are prices that have been thrown out. And I just ear to the ground reading the tea leaves. I'm just much more on the side that for whatever reason, these guys are they're in. They somehow are in.
To steelman that, there's a lot of, it's not even for whatever reason. They were getting kicked out financially. They were getting lawfare attacks left and right. All kinds of stuff. They probably found Bitcoin because they actually need it, because they're getting attacked from the state in all these different ways. And so I think that they deeply, deeply, deeply align to it in a way that no previous administration does. So I think that, Eric Trump did say that in the MENA conference. So
I want to highlight something that Quittem said, this idea of a stockpile versus a reserve. And this has been a little sub debate going on this topic. The TLDR is basically stockpile is just you hold the asset kind of like a sovereign wealth fund. It's just hey, this might appreciate in value. It'll be good for the balance sheet, good for the fiscal situation, all things equal, blah, blah, blah. A reserve gives Bitcoin much more of like an explicit monetary tie-in. You start saying like, oh, this is going to support the dollar or potentially back the dollar one day. That makes it more like a reserve. And there are people out there who have voiced more of an opposition or a hesitancy in calling it a reserve. So I just want to throw that out there. We can debate that if you want. I didn't want to necessarily debate that now. This is my prediction. If they only do a stockpile, and they only do it by holding the 200,000 roughly Bitcoin they already have. And if corporate adoption, basically the MicroStrategy LBE playbook, happens the way that I personally think it's going to happen in 2025, put all those things together, I would be shocked if Bitcoin only hits 150K. Like, I think just those alone are enough to take it well above 150K in 2025.
Okay, so I pulled up the PolyMarket again. Steven and I are saying 50% over 250. I think that's what we said. I think that's about right. What would you put it at, John?
I'm kind of thinking a bare minimum is that the US says we're holding the 200K Bitcoin as a stockpile, and corporations are going to go really hard at Bitcoin adoption. And obviously individuals and wealthy individuals are going to continue as well. So I think put all that together, I think 200 is like a better than 50% chance. I think 250 is maybe even better than, I don't know, better than 40% chance is rough numbers in my head.
All right, Brandon.
Yeah, I don't have any novel opinions. I agree. I'm a buyer of everything I see on the screen, and similar range to what you guys are saying. The question for me is, I'm not well versed in PolyMarket. Is PolyMarket, are they bearish posturally towards Bitcoin? Is there any way to discount these? Like that, what's the PolyMarket discount here?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so.
No,
I wouldn't say. Yeah.
I don't think there's some kind of bias against it. It's a very crypto friendly.
That's what I thought.
Platform.
44% that we see a 50% gain temporarily in the next 362 days. That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, so it's 100% at 200K, and that historically is completely, like, we've seen it in the third green year of this 4-year cycle pattern that we're seeing.
So
yeah, so I would say like,
okay, we need to form a Swan Signal Live PolyMarket account, and we need to start betting.
Let's just buy the Bitcoin, bro. We can have a treasury for the show.
Okay, fair. But I think we can at least do a paper portfolio. I think we should start like I think the 44%, the 24% is the most mispriced. 200 at 24. I think that's the most mispriced, and I would bid that, and we should come back in 6 months and see how that did.
Yeah, we'll track it. We'll see how it is. So let's say we're a big buyer at the 200,000 at 24%. I think 250 is probably more like 24%. And I think 1 million is more like 5. Like 5 is probably good. 10% if certain things happen. I just think it's possible that yes, this time is different, but like, how can you not say yes, this time is different when you're staring at a possible strategic Bitcoin reserve for the most powerful nation on the planet? This is the end of the beginning. We're going into the sort of early majority phase out of the early adopters phase. I agree with you completely. We're in a new phase now, moving up that adoption curve. And remember, everyone, this is a S-curve adoption. Like, this is a technological exponential technology following that S-curve that all of these exponential technologies have followed throughout the past 100 years plus, right? This happens. It's been proven thousands of times. And this is an exponential technology built on the internet, which is, of course, an exponential technology. The suddenly is a thing. And I could see the suddenly happening this year. There's a distinct possibility that we start running up that asymptote really, really fast, and it blows everybody away. And it's not something that we can intuitively understand. We repel that idea. We don't, like, our brains do not like exponentials. They do not quite grok them or understand them. Someone who really does grok them is Ray Kurzweil, who wrote the book The Singularity is Near and other books to that end, talking about the development of AI and other exponential tech. And that guy gets it. And his predictions on the evolution of these technologies has been pretty much right on. He called for AGI by the end of the 2020s. And it looks like we're on track for that, if not doing it a bit earlier. We have to think more like Ray to really understand what's happening here. And I think that when that suddenly hits, it's going to surprise even us. So just hang on to that. The suddenly will be here at some point. And I could see the setup for it happening right now.